Day 369 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And first off, we'll head over to the Russian military losses. And currently, Russia is sitting on 148,690 military personnel losses there. Then when we take a look at the Russian hardware losses, 4 tanks, 6 APVs, and even 1 aircraft, and I'll get into that shortly. So we'll start out today in Belarus, where just south of the Minsk capital, at the Machulisky airfield, a blast occurred, damaging a Russian A-50 radar plane. Now, this is a huge deal because Russia only has 6 of these, well, 5 now technically, and it costs a fortune to build and are an extremely complex aircraft to make. So these are also known as early warning and control aircrafts, or AWACS for short, and are crucial for situational awareness with regards to detecting and tracking airborne and ground targets at long ranges. And given what it does, what first might come to mind is the irony of the situation. But so far as we can tell, it's being claimed that partisans in the region are responsible for this occurrence. Then we'll move across back to the main map, where mostly overnight, Russia performed a small wave of Shahed drone attacks on Ukraine, 14 in total with 11 shot down. And this happened at various locations, various oblasts, including Chernihiv, Zhytomyr, Kyiv, Poltava, and more. And this was not exactly what you might consider an extensive wave, certainly not one to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses, which to me makes it seem more like a fear campaign of terrorizing the civilian population of Ukraine more than anything else. Not exactly a way to win their hearts. Then we'll move further into, we'll move into the Donbass now. So just north of Bakhmut, the situation remains pretty critical. Russian forces have been launching constant assaults with the aim of operationally encircling the city still. In fact, the Ukrainian forces have been performing counterattacks to the north, for instance at Yahidne, to slow the advances that happen quite often. And due to all of these northern advance attempts from the Russian forces, Ukraine has hit the dam northwest of Bakhmut. And this is really to let the floodgates open, or should I say, to literally let the floodgates open to slow down any unwanted Russian advances there. Then we move nearby to the southwest of Bakhmut, where Russian forces in fact lost a bit of land just south of Ivaniska. So if we go to the date map in the last day or two, you'll see that they were quite a bit pushed back there in fact. Now, I would say, however, they are making some attempts at some gains in between Bakhmut and Ivaniska as they look to reach the main highway there. Now, theoretically, this would be for Russian forces to cut off supplies, AFU supplies to Bakhmut, but that's not really the case, as the Ukrainian forces take the back route to supply Bakhmut for the essentially needed defensive hardware there. But Russian forces are edging up towards an urban-style environment, as you can see there, which would naturally slow them down, any offensive force really. But it's obviously way too close for comfort for Ukrainian forces, so I suspect Ukraine will be heavily concentrating artillery fire here, if not already. Then we'll move down south to Avdiivka. So here we go, this Avdiivka basin, as I like to call it. So Ukraine downed yet another aircraft in the Avdiivka region. Again, it was another Russian Su-25 ground attack aircraft, naturally designed to support or attempt to support its infantry forces in the region. Then just a little bit further down at Marinka, so there was yet another repelled Russian attack in this location. A Russian BMP fighting vehicle was destroyed in the process as well. Then again, Vuhledar. Russia again recently tried full steam ahead in this obvious minefield location. And you know what? Russia's Naval Infantry Brigade has been at the forefront of recent costly offensives here. And this Naval Infantry Brigade is seen as an elite infantry force within the Russian military. Only problem is it's been backfilled with inexperienced Russian mobilized personnel, now certainly leading to a severely degraded capability. And traditionally, this brigade or unit would be considered something like the US Marines of the Russian army. So imagine the US Marines were depleted, then they backfilled with Dave from accounts. So in one foul swoop, you've gone from a prestigiously recognized unit, supposedly, to just utter garbage, it seems. Although there's still no doubt in my mind that the Russian Marines unit of sorts, will still commit to future assaults in or on Volodar, but realistically, they are the naval infantry forces in name and only in name at this point. So they're just another cannon fodder unit. Then we'll move around on the map and we'll take a quick peek at Crimea. So activists of the Yellow Ribbon movement, so the pro-Ukrainian Yellow Ribbon movement, have been at it again in various regions of the Crimean Peninsula, the occupied Crimean Peninsula, including Sevastopol, Yatla, and Simferopol, and did something quite creative and bold. They turned the Russian War Z symbol into a blue and yellow hourglass. So as you can see, Crimea seems to be just yearning for the AFU. And there was also some additional footage as well of the same type, showing the yellow ribbon symbol itself becoming imprinted on the region. At this stage, it's almost like a psyop at this point, performed by local partisans. Then it wouldn't be anything of a map update without at least touching on the touchy topic of Transnistria. So this region right here, which is, let's say, between Moldova and Ukraine, which considers itself a self-proclaimed republic separate from Moldova, although not internationally recognized really at all. And never mind the few thousand Russian soldiers stationed there permanently. But most recently, Russia accused Ukraine of preparing an invasion of Transnistria. So that's a lot of paranoia. I mean, so long as Transnistrian troops, let's call them, don't step out of bounds, Ukraine has bigger fish to fry than them. So it's just silly to think they'll do that. But clearly Russia has long-term goals to take over Transnistria and anything nearby. So I don't see much happening here, but if it did, it would be just like another David and Goliath battle. Only this time it would be Ukraine as the Goliath in that little example. So all in all, on the map, Ukraine is eyeing to launch a major counter-offensive in spring to take back some of the occupied Russian lands of its previous take-ins, which could even include striking airfields and depots of rocket and artillery systems inside of Russia itself. So as the muddy season takes its toll at the moment, largely forcing both sides to ideally want to take defensive stances instead. And by the time that passes, we expect to really see some things really start to move along in March, the later part of March. In fact, Ukraine says this spring counteroffensive is to target the south. But the last time Ukraine said this, well, Russia amassed 30,000 soldiers on Kherson's north bank, pretty much this big green area here, and Ukraine then proceeded to take Kharkiv, the oblast, back as a bit of a sort of a switcheroo. So do take the idea of a Ukrainian southern offensive with a grain of salt for now. Then we'll move across to some news for the day, a little bit of a shorter video unfortunately. So China has a 12-point peace plan for Ukraine, achieving a political settlement to resolve Russia's war against Ukraine. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't even mention the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine's territory. And you know, when Zelensky was asked the other day about China's peace plan, he replied such that he didn't know there was a peace plan from China for Ukraine. But then he also went on to say there is only one Ukrainian peace plan for Ukraine, and that includes Russia's withdrawing of its troops from Ukraine. Yeah, that seems to make a lot better sense. Then in some other news, over the past year, Russia's spending on the war in Ukraine has been a total of about 120 billion US dollars worth, depending on how you count it, which equates to roughly 1/3 of Russia's annual tax revenues. And we only expect Russia to spend, maybe just have to be forced to spend more this year on this useless war, whilst at the same time the economy has moved into a negative growth territory, making for one expensive 3-day war. Then in some other news, Saudi Arabia has provided Ukraine with 400 million US dollars in humanitarian aid, as the nations announced during a Saudi high-level delegation visit to Kyiv on Sunday. Now 300 out of that $400 million in aid is actually in the form of crude oil, which is a pretty easy thing for Saudi Arabia to swing, being the largest oil exporter on earth. But crude oil or petroleum or even refined gas products certainly goes a long way for any country at war. Then in some not so much news, not exactly sure what to ever call this, but Russian mill blogger Igor Girkin is at it again, being a little bit more frank and honest than most of his Russian comrades in the blogosphere, as he speaks about the Russian failures over the past year, being pushed out of many regions they previously held. Then he rounds off by summarizing the year that was, saying, quote, "In its current state, the Russian army is unable to defeat the Ukrainian armed forces." Then we'll move across to a bit of a funny to round it all off for today, guys. A bit of a strange funny, but it does involve Uncle Luca. So Uncle Luca, he is at it again, as he just continues to say some of the strangest things. This time he was saying that the Poles and the Lithuanians want a dictatorship just like in Belarus. So he's saying that they somehow want to model themselves off Belarus. It's just odd. Now, I've sometimes seen Uncle Luca speak sarcastically, even around Putin, and those moments were just extremely cringe-worthy. But in this relatively straight-faced rhetoric from Uncle Luca right now, he just continues to go on and legitimize, or seem to legitimize what he's saying, as he's calling his presidential republic a ruling dictatorship. And you know, it's not exactly the type of joke a politician can get away with, unless of course you really are part of a ruling dictatorship. So thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate all the likes and the comments. As for a bit of a channel update, I'm trying to figure out and stabilize the exact days I'll be posting videos into the foreseeable future. I'm looking to make it more consistent. I juggle a lot of things, but I think I can achieve something you'd all be pretty happy with. So again, thanks for watching, thanks for the support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.